Welcome, Motenta people. The theater legend Tallulah Bankhead, whose name sat atop Will Hay's famous doom book, Unsuitable for the Public, was not an ordinary everyday star. She was a personality more than an actress. She was a celebrity even before the word was ever invented. Let's have a look at her big persona and bigger reputation as the bad, boldest, wildest woman in the acting world. How Tallulah Bankhead became her own worst enemy? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you're new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Motenta's channel. Whenever you hear the name Tallulah Bankhead, you will learn all the stories about an outspoken, bold, and wild actress. But barely anybody will ever tell you about the struggles and tragedies of her life behind her persona. In this video, we'll talk about all the hidden aspects of her life. We're talking about the tragedy of her life, and it's quite sad to realize that the tragedy struck into the life of Bankhead right from the start. Following Tallulah's birth, her mother, the most beautiful thing that ever lived, died of complications just at the age of 21, causing her father Will to collapse into alcoholism, self-pity, and an absence pattern that lasted for years. Tallulah, one of the children of a prominent political family at the turn of the 20th century in Alabama, was a bad-tempered baby who later developed into a defiant child. Are you also a fan of her husky voice? But did you know that the famous voice that would become her trademark was the result of a series of throat and chest infections, whooping cough, measles, pneumonia, and mumps? Yes, that's true, unfortunately. It is ironic that Bankhead was sent to convents when her family was not even Catholic, and she was twice expelled for demonstrating uncontrollable behavior. There were other passions that Tallulah inherited from her father besides politics. He had been an actor as a young boy, one of the reasons he went to Boston to try his luck as an actor as well. Tallulah was always enthused to perform, even from an early age. Bankhead got a small part in a movie and a trip to New York when she was 15 after submitting her photo to Picture Play magazine. Bankhead stayed at the then unremarkable Algonquin Hotel with her lax Aunt Louise as a chaperone. Tallulah was generally broke, having to scrounge for food and rack up bills at the Algonquin, whose long-suffering owner proclaimed, "I can either run this hotel or care for Tallulah Bankhead. There's no way I can do both." Luckily, Bankhead met John and Ethel Barrymore, Dorothy Parker, and Zelda Fitzgerald soon after. After some 5 years in New York, she progressed from walk-ons to leads in undistinguished plays, but her big breakthrough hadn't come, and she was frustrated, anxious, and broke. Playing opposite Du Maurier in London was an opportunity she saw as a chance to dominate the West End. It's like she's been told her future is across the Atlantic by a trendy astrologer. The play was The Dancers, and she played Maxine, a Canadian saloon dancer who ends up marrying Tony, the bartender, who turns out to be the Earl of Chiefly. She conquered the West End with her glorious hair, her distinctive voice, and her unrestrained dancing and cartwheeling during her English career. She cartwheeled wherever the script allowed, but sometimes when it didn't. Every night throughout the 10-month run of The Dancers, a group of rabid young women gathered up in the gallery to show their love for their heroine. She gained the most loyal and vocal following in London in only 3 years. As Arnold Bennett pointed out, ordinary stars get hands. When Tallulah gets a hand, it doesn't get heard. Instead, what is heard is a tremendous, wild, passionate, and hysterical roar and whistle. This situation can only be described in the phrase of the psalmist, "God has gone up with a shout." In response to a reporter from New York, she informed him, "Over here, they like me to play reckless parts and dance and sing and romp like Tallulah." Yes, she became a verb. Tallulah played 16 plays in London, from the outright junk Conchita, The Creaking Chair, Mud and Treacle, to the Pulitzer Prize-winning They Knew What They Wanted. The last-minute cancellation of her role as Sadie Thompson in Somerset Maugham's Reign made her so depressed that she considered suicide. In Lobenthal's words, she popped 20 aspirins, scribbled a suicide note, "It ain't gonna rain no more," and laid down on her intended grave. But you can always expect the unexpected from Tallulah. She woke up the next morning feeling fine, to a phone call asking her to act in Noel Coward's Fallen Angels. Work wasn't the only thing she did in London. Her reputation spread like wildfire, and she wanted to enjoy every second. As much of a celebrity as she was known for her provocative performances, she was also known for her shenanigans off stage. There was no end to her highly publicized flings, ranging from the tennis champion Jean Barotra to Lord Birkenhead to a fraudulent Italian aristocrat whom she almost married. Also, Napier Allington was always on her mind. When the decade came to an end, she decided to head home. She was approaching 30. Naps was getting married, and she was broke since she always spent everything she earned. Suddenly, a $5,000 a week job offer from Paramount opened the door for her. At that time, Hollywood, with the advent of sound, was signing up all of the attractive stage stars it could find, and the exotic Tallulah, with her seductive husky voice, had the ability to become the next Garbo, the next Dietrich, in a matter of months. She left for New York in January 1931. Within a year and a half, Bankhead made 6 feature films and, of course, a lot of money. But none of them worked. No matter what she did, jumping off a balcony rather than going back to her blind husband, escaping from the submarine her crazed husband had sabotaged, or going on the streets to get money for her husband's medicine, reviewers either said she was wasted or that she didn't live up to the cliches. According to George Cukor, who directed her once, on the screen she had beautiful bones, but her eyes weren't suitable for movies. They looked kind of dead. The truth was, she was first and foremost a creature of the stage, all about projecting her bigger-than-life personality onto an audience, not about letting cameras explore her face and reveal her emotions. She felt caged and suppressed in the movies. In Hollywood, however, she partied nonstop and drove a Rolls, got a suntan, and enjoyed the best life. As Joan Crawford recalled, she was adored by everyone. She fascinated us and scared us to death, too. She had such authority, as if she had the power to rule the planet, or as if she had stepped on the moon. She struggled with everything she tried on stage, especially when she took on Antony and Cleopatra in 1937. She had no classical technique, and she didn't want to be coached. In the 30s, Tallulah had been hospitalized for an abdominal tumor, but was actually suffering from gonorrhea, which was so violent it nearly killed her. After a 4-hour hysterectomy, she was down to 70 pounds when she left the hospital. After her hysterectomy, she was not only physically weak, but also psychologically drained. Marriage, however, was reluctantly possible. She married actor John Emery, whom she described as so-so, in August 1937 at her father's home. There was no way the marriage was going to work, writes Brett, a sentiment Bankhead would also agree with. After 20 years of unbridled freedom, of acting on a whim, I couldn't discipline myself to the degree necessary for a successful marriage. The hard work she put into getting the role of Scarlett in Gone with the Wind had not succeeded in securing her the role. In the late 30s, however, her luck changed. She captivated Broadway with her commanding performance in Lillian Hellman's The Little Foxes as a cruel Southern matron. In March 1939, she was on the cover of Life, and the story underneath was unambiguous, mentioning, somehow it was difficult to find appropriate parts for this strange electric woman with languid eyes, a panther's step, and a siren's husky voice. However, now for the first time, she fills a role big enough and fierce enough for her talent. Her triumph was undimmed, except for Bette Davis winning the remake. In 1942, she starred in Skin of Our Teeth, playing the immortal Temptress Sabina in guises as a housemaid, beauty contest winner, and camp follower. Her rollicking humor and allure were able to shine in this challenging role, and she got another Broadway win. Then she landed a role as a famous journalist in the claustrophobic wartime drama Lifeboat. A lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic would seem to be the last place you would expect Tallulah to be in, right? In spite of this, she managed to carry off her role, if somewhat heavily, and she was rewarded by the New York Film Critics Circle, which chose her as Best Actress of 1944. In addition, there was just one more important film that she appeared in a year later, A Royal Scandal, which was a major disappointment because of Otto Preminger's direction and her own somewhat labored performance as Catherine the Great. The years that established Tallulah as one of Broadway's most prominent performers also saw the development of Tallulah's interest in politics and international affairs. From the very beginning, her political mentor had been her father. He died in 1940. Despite the fact that she always claimed that he was the most important figure in her life, she never felt comfortable with him, and they spent very little time together. She also had a difficult time relating to the rest of her family members as well. In the meantime, she found a new family. She became close to Eugenia Rawls, the actress who played her daughter in The Little Foxes. In her lawsuit against Prel Shampoo for presuming to use Tallulah in an advertisement, Rawls' husband won her a big settlement, and she stood as godmother to the couple's 2 kids, giving them each a quarter of her large estate. She got her big break on Broadway in 1948 in Noel Coward's Private Lives, which she had been playing in summer stock for a while, and she wanted to continue. Rather than Noel Coward's show, it was her own outrageous, rampaging crash of high camp and low comedy. As expected, audiences loved it, and Coward, as usual, did not. And despite the fact that it made her a fortune, it was her last big hit on stage. It could be argued that she had a couple of inconclusive cabaret engagements and countless radio and TV appearances, but they were nothing compared to her glory years. During the 1950s, Tallulah ushered out commercial radio with a bang when she debuted as the MC of the weekly hour-and-a-half extravaganza known as The Big Show. To everyone's surprise, including her own, the show was not only hailed by critics as a potential savior to radio, but it was also an immediate success. It was an achievement that was deserved but short-lived, as radio was ultimately overtaken by television in terms of popularity. It wasn't until 1952 that her book was published. This book made a splash for being prickly, honest for its day, and funny. After she turned 50, Tallulah's demons got stronger. She was an insomniac. Now she was frantic for sleep. As early as 1948, she was noticed consuming heavy doses of medicines after drinking. There was no way she could bear the thought of being alone. Close friends, colleagues, servants, and the young men she attached herself to and called her caddies, all were wheeled or ordered to sit on her bed all night while she struggled to sleep. There was no end to her talking. Someone followed her around one day and claimed that she racked up 70,000 words, which is the length of a novel. It's no wonder Howard Deitch said, "A day away from Tallulah is like a month in the country." Lobenthal tells of bills for rolls and rolls of 3-inch adhesive tape found in her hotel room. It turned out that her maid taped her wrists together at night so she wouldn't take any more pills while she was awake. In a hotel hallway, a colleague saw her one night. She was like a caged chimp. Straggled hair, barely dressed, she flailed at the wall, sputtering, "Where am I?" It was a rough time for her. She had serious accidents and psychotic episodes when she was sedated. The aging process was cruel to her, according to Orson Welles. "I'll never forget what she looked like at the end, and how beautiful she was at the beginning." At least she didn't lose her sense of humor. When people ask, "Aren't you Tallulah Bankhead?" she would say, "I'm what's left of her, darling." Throughout her life, she had said she wanted to die. Once playing the truth game with Tennessee Williams, she admitted, "I'm 54, and I've always wanted to die. I don't want anything else." She got her way 12 years later, in 1968, and died of double pneumonia. No one else crashed and burned like Tallulah. Even alcoholic Loretta Taylor redeemed lost decades with her brilliant performance in The Glass Menagerie. Tallulah substituted personality for technique, and eccentricity for effort, wasting her abundant talent. It was predictable, given that she ignored guidelines and indulged in her privilege. Considering she was intelligent, she must have seen the waste. She was pessimistic for a reason. So, what are we left with of this most thoroughgoing libertine and free-swinging flapper of the era? It's The Little Foxes to theater buffs, Lifeboat to movie buffs, a faint memory of a rowdy life and a purring drawl. Today, we know all there is to know about Tallulah Bankhead, thanks to her brutal honesty. Such honesty is rare to find in this world, and so is Tallulah Bankhead. Isn't that right? Tallulah's biggest enemy was herself, but there were those who have not had to look for the bad guys in Hollywood. Why was Judy Garland forced to modify her body? Watch this video.